Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And good evening and welcome to the Reaver of Common Sense. I am your host, Jersey Joe, making sense out of the senseless right here on SHRmedia.com. Conservative media done right. Tonight's show is about accountability and, more importantly, about what happens when leaders either enforce the law or deliberately step aside when enforcement becomes inconvenient. Across every segment tonight, you will see the same pattern emerge. Ideological, soften consequences, and real people pay the price. We begin overseas, where a dictator loses decisively and refuses to leave power. Enforcing consequences is not the same as being upset about an election outcome, and pretending otherwise excuses authoritarianism. From there, we come home, where the media finally collides with a big, hard truth. Journalism is not immunity. Live streaming is not a legal shield. And unlawful conduct does not become protected because a camera is rolling. Then we turn to enforcement when it is allowed to work. A violent gang network is dismantled. Drug trafficking is stopped before it reaches America's streets. Taxpayer money hidden because ideology is traced. Symbolic policies expose deadly consequences, and a shutdown fight reveals what happens when leadership slips major changes into must-pass bills and expects no resistance. Nothing tonight is random. None of it happened in isolation. This is a show about enforcement, reverse excuses, accountability versus ideology, and what happens when reality finally catches up to narrative. Oh, let's get into it. But before we go any further, hit that like button, smash subscribe, and share the stream like your freedom depends on it, because it just might. Every click helps us punch through big tech censorship, drown out media noise, and make sure common sense has a fighting chance. Whew. So Rand Paul's premise is false. Maduro didn't lose a disputed election. He lost by a landslide and refused to leave. He wasn't an elected official. This is where Rand Paul gets the entire foundation of his argument wrong. And once that foundation collapses, everything built on top of it goes with it. Paul framed the removal of Maduro as if it were about one side being unhappy with an election outcome. That is simply not what happened in Venezuela. And the actual election figures show why. According to independently collected voting tallies from polling stations across the country, collected by opposition poll watchers, opposition candidate Amundo Gonzalez was shown to have received approximately 67% of the vote, compared to about 30 cents. 30%, 30 cents. Woo, we're starting out good tonight. For Maduro, these results came from tabulations of nearly all record tally sheets that could be verified, representing a landslide and not a close, disputed outcome. The government's official National Electoral Council declared Maduro the winner with just over 51%, but it never released detailed vote tallies to back up that figure. That lacked transparency, and the wide gap between the official number and the independent collected tally were reasons international observers and analysis rejected the official results as lacking credibility. Think about that. We're bitching about removing a guy that lost an election and stayed in power, and Rand Paul's up there bitching and moaning, and the excuses he comes up with are just lame. I'm trying to be nice by just calling it lame. I knew a few others would like to label it some other stuff, but I'm just going to leave it at lame. And one thing I want to I want to thank everybody that's in the chat room, everybody that's coming in to watch, whether you like the show, hate the show, like me, hate me, I don't care. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being in the chat room. All I ask is just one simple thing. Keep it respectful. That's it. Keep it respectful. If you disagree, disagree. You don't want people to be rude to you. Don't be rude to the moderators. They're there just to make sure everything's going smoothly. So that's all I ask. Otherwise, disagree all you want. Let's have some fun. So here's the crucial point. Maduro didn't just lose. He lost decisively according to credible, independent data. And instead of stepping aside, he refused to leave power, mobilize state power to suppress dissident, and continue to rule by force. That is not a case of a one political side upset. That is an outright refusal to cede authority after a clear electoral rejection. That distinction matters because it destroys Paul's comparison at its root. When Paul says we don't use force when we think elections haven't gone our way, he is describing constitutional disputes and system with functioning rule of law where disagreements are resolved through courts, recounts, and institutional checks. That is nothing like what happened in Venezuela. In Venezuela, the electoral rejected Maduro. Independent tallies showed an overwhelming opposition victory, yet Maduro clung to power through repression and institutional manipulation. You cannot equate that with political figures in constitutional republics having disputes over legitimacy, recounts, or narratives. Those disputes occur within systems that still function. Maduro dismantled the system itself. Paul's comparison to Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden failed because none of them lost an election, ignored the result, dissolved democratic institutions, ruled by decree afterward. None of them ordered security forces to crush opposition to stay in office. None of them converted the state into a criminal apparatus to maintain power. Maduro did. That's what Rand Paul can't get through his head. Rand Paul can't get over what Trump did to him in the primaries in 2015. Trump bounced him out of there and embarrassed him. And ever since, Paul can't get over it. That's what it comes down to. Rand Paul can't get over it. Same with Massey. There's a couple others out there that are still butthurt about Trump. And instead of swallowing their pride, swallowing their ego, and doing what's best for the country, they are out to interfere with Trump. He's acting like a 5-year-old child that didn't get what he wanted, so now he's throwing a tantrum. People are getting tired of that. They're getting tired of him. Once a leader loses an election by a landslide and refuses to step down, he is no longer a legitimate head of state. He becomes an unlawful occupier of power. At that point, arguments about sovereignty weaken dramatically because sovereignty flows through legitimacy. Legitimacy which Maduro himself severed. This also means the action taken against Maduro was not about using force to get our way. It was about enforcing consequences against someone who nullified the will of his people and turned Venezuela into a narco state. Arresting a leader who lost decisively, refused to leave, and ruled through coercion is not election interference. It is accountability. Paul's constitutional argument about declarations of war does not apply here. This was not a war to overturn a vote. It was an operation against an illegitimate ruler who had already overturned one himself. Here's the key truth this segment needs to land. Maduro's removal was not one political side being upset. And I hope this lands with you guys. It was the enforcement of reality after a clear electoral loss and an outright refusal to step down. Pretending otherwise sanitizes dictatorships and confuses restraint with surrender. And that is why Rand Paul's framing is not just flawed, it is fundamentally incorrect. Actually, BZ, they're both red. Oh, man. So, let's see. Where do we go from here? This one put a big smile on my face. Don, I keep wanting to call him Lime. Don Lemon was taken into custody for involvement in live streaming an attack at a Minnesota church. He's since been released. This segment is not about journalism. It's about participation, proximity, and accountability. Former CNN anchor Don Lemon was taken into custody by federal agents Thursday night in Los Angeles, following his involvement in a January protest at a Minnesota church. Lemon and his attorney immediately tried to frame the arrest as a First Amendment issue. The framing does not survive scrutiny. According to reports, Lemon was live streaming during a quote-unquote protest that escalated into a forced disruption of a religious service at St. Paul City's church in Minnesota. Federal authorities reportedly viewed the incident not as passive observation, but as participation in an action that interfered with religious worship. That distinction matters. It very much matters. He was a part of this. He got in the pastor's face. He got in people's face. The people that went in there not only were chanting, they blocked stairwells. They stopped parents from getting to their kids. They threatened those parents that were trying to get their kids, that were frightened about what was going on. This was not a protest. This was an attack on a church. This went beyond protesting. If they were outside and stayed outside and protest, fine. The moment they went in there and disrupted a religious event, it passed being a protest. You cannot disrupt. And there's one thing I've seen, and it's so dead on, and I've heard from 1950s, one of my friends said, I'll even go nowadays. Could you imagine if a white group went into a black church and did that? And struck fear into their heart and blocked people from getting to their kids? Could you imagine the liberal media and the narrative that they would be spinning right now? But it's okay when it happens to a church filled with white people, then it's protesting. They went in there to intimidate. They went in there to quote Don Lemon. Jesus. How did I get that in my head? That's what I'd like to know. How I got that in my head. He literally used the word torture, torment. But somehow that's okay. The left is making excuse after excuse for it. going into the church had nothing to do with the immigration. The person that they thought they were going after wasn't even there. They had somebody in there prior because they had recordings prior to going in. Don knew what he was doing. He went over the line from being a journalist to being involved in it. I mean, I would be like, okay, I'm going to go do a journalism thing. I'm going to go with these guys that are going to rob the bank. I'm just going to observe and report on it. No, it makes you part of it. He was part of this. He needs to have his day in court and answer for it. What people don't understand is a grand jury in Minnesota, a federal grand jury in Minnesota, indicted him. The people of Minnesota that were on that grand jury said there is enough evidence for him to stand trial. This is not Trump arresting him. It is not Pam Bondi arresting him. This is a grand jury indicting him of Minnesota people. This is not made up stuff. This is what's going on. It's funny how for 4 years, the left was quiet about going after journalists, arresting politicians left, right, and center. They had no problem with it then. And now that their people are being held accountable to their illegal activities, all of a sudden they're crying like little kids. Well, the problem is the left kind of started this. They opened the floodgates on the politicians being open to being arrested. They opened the floodgates on journalists being arrested. This was opened by Democrats. And now you're upset that the exact same things are being held. You're being held to the same standard. Well, that's your problem. That's a you problem, not a me problem. And you're not liking that. Oh, well, grow up. This is what's happening. He overstepped the line from journalism into activism. He broke the law. There's laws that prevent people from going in churches like that. I don't want to see it happen to any church, any religion. Not just Christian church, not just the white church. I don't want to see it happen to any goddamn church. No one should have to live in fear in a church for worshiping. Lime's attorney claims this was constitutionally protected work and accuses the Trump Justice Department of targeting a journalist instead of investigating federal agents. Well, when your journalism goes into activism, you're no longer covered. It is not a big shield that shields you from committing crimes. And that argument assumes facts not established and ignores the core issue. If a person embeds with a group, enters private property, live streams while the group disruptive church service, and advances the objectives of the protest in real time, law enforcement is not required to pretend that person was merely an observer. We are just getting started, folks. This is the anatomy of modern political warfare, and we're only peeling back the first layer. So don't go away. We'll be right back right after this little break.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Are you looking for a way to boldly express your faith and love for your country? And check out Seven Armors, the premier apparel company for patriotic men of God, where faith meets freedom in style. Our t-shirts are more than just clothing, they are statements. Bold, stylish, and meaningful. From timeless messages to modern designs, we've got something for every patriotic man of God. Wear your beliefs proudly with 7 Armor's gear. Don't miss the chance to wear your faith and freedom on your sleeve. Visit 7armors.com today and join the movement. That's the number 7armors.com.
Come listen to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show. Live on select and exclusive Tuesday and Thursday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Rumble channel, SHR Media YouTube channel, X, Twitch, Spreaker, and wherever great conservative podcasts are found. BZ, your conservative Sherpa, guides you through the maelstrom of Democrat, leftist, and globalist lies, chaos, deceit, and betrayal. Raised as a free-range child with dirt, stains, mud, and freedom, BZ broadcasts from North Idaho, comfortably surrounded by actual normal people. Jump into our plush, sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent chat room on rumble.com. Click on live chat to join. Now, with 37% more umbrage and 19% more bulbosity than previous shows, featuring delicious Liberty additives for the best in late-night conservatarian talk radio. BZ reminds you that with great beard comes great responsibility. No chinchillas were harmed, embarrassed, fat-shamed, or the focus of any sarcasm whatsoever in the making of this ad.
Freedom. One nation in all of human history was built on that bedrock. Ours. A republic of the people, by the people, and for the people. Self-government requires freedom, just as freedom requires an individual willingness to self-govern. Freedom has made America exceptional. But it can only last as long as you and I seek the good, as expressed by the laws of nature and nature's God. It can only last if you and I choose to act as people of character. Forging character has been the pursuit of Hillsdale College since 1844.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Reaver of Common Sense. Making sense out of senseless right here on SHR Media, conservative media done right. Before we go any further, hit that like button, smash subscribe, and share the stream like your freedom depends on it, because it just might. Every click helps us punch through big tech censorship, drowns out media noise, and make sure common sense has a fighting chance. Now let's get back with the stories. The First Amendment protects news gathering. It does not protect coordination, facilitation, or interference. Federal authorities have not publicly released the specific charges, but reporting indicates lemon, damn, fuck, I don't know why my brain is doing that. Why Lemon may be charged under the Enforcement Act of 1871, which prohibits interference with civil rights, including the free exercise of religion. The Trump administration has also cited the FACE Act as relevant due to the disruption of a religious service. Those statutes are not obscure. They exist precisely because mob intimidation and coordination, disruption of protected activities are not speech. They are conduct. And let's go back. How many of you that have kids would not have been had fear had a large group blocked your access from you getting to your kids? And that's both left and right. I don't think there is a parent that wouldn't have had fear when people are blocking your access and refusing to let you get to your kids that have no right to block you from your kids. Again, that is not protesting. Really, at that point, they're holding those kids hostages with force, by threat of force. And when you're a part of something like that, you're just as guilty for those acts. Don may not have been involved in actively blocking the parents, but because he was a part of that group, he is just as guilty of it. Don insists he was only covering the protests, but coverage does not require entering the middle of an unlawful action. Coverage does not require amplifying a disruption as it happens, and coverage certainly does not require remaining embedded with a group that storms a church because they are enraged that one of its pastors reportedly works with ICE. That motivation also matters. The protest was reportedly driven by anger over immigration enforcement, specifically ICE arrest and deportation of violent criminals. Targeting a church over the lawful employment of one of its pastors crosses a clear line. Religious worship is explicitly protected under federal civil rights law, regardless whether activists approve of the politics of those attending. Let's get this straight. We are enforcing our federal laws, and people are trying to defend murderers, rapists, drug dealers, traffickers. That is what this anti-ICE crowd is doing. You are protecting these criminals. There has been 0 Americans deported. 0 American citizens. Under Obama, there was 4. You didn't bitch then. The Americans that have been arrested, there has been a couple that have been arrested, later released, and never charged because they were mistakenly picked up under illegal immigration. The error rate is so friggin' low on that. It's like 0.0027%. The other ones that have been arrested have interfered and obstructed and were arrested for other offenses not related to illegal immigration status. But the media runs with it, and people, because it's emotional, believe it. They don't look into the facts, the stats. They go with the media narrative and go with it. There's also an important procedural point being glossed over. A prior attempt to arrest Don was reportedly halted when a judge declined to sign off on a warrant. This arrest, however, is believed to stem from a grand jury indictment, which changes the legal posturing entirely. Grand juries exist to determine whether sufficient evidence exists to proceed. That process is not political theater. Calling this an attack on the First Amendment is a familiar tactic. It is also a lazy one. If Don had stood across the street with a camera, or even outside of the building, and documented events, this would be a different conversation. But when a media figure becomes functionally indistinguishable from the protest itself, and the shield of journalism does not apply. This is not about silencing the press. It is about enforcing the line between reporting and rioting. And if Don wants to argue otherwise, the courtroom is the place to do it. Not a press release. Hold on a second. Ooh. And then you have those that are posted on X. Well, a judge blocked him from arresting him. No, a judge did not block the DOJ from charging or arresting Don. Here's exactly what Chief U.S. District Court Judge said, or actually ruled. If the government does not like the magistrate judge's decision, it can present its case to a grand jury and seek an indictment, which is exactly what the DOJ did, and a grand jury found probable cause to charge Don with multiple crimes. Stop with the bullshit misinformation. Now I'm waiting for the left to freak out because the FBI has smashed Latin King's network in 13 city gang offensives. Hold on. Don't forget, if you could like, share, and subscribe this, it helps the network out. We are trying to grow. Within the last year, we've really put the nose to the grindstone. We kind of, for a couple years, took some time off because of personal life between all of us. And we're back at it. We're here. And we've really pushed the envelope with it. We need 76 more subs to hit our next plateau. So if you could like, share, subscribe, whether you like me or not, like I said, you can come into the chat. Tell me I'm wrong. I don't care. Disagree with me. Just do it respectfully. That's all I ask. And if you're looking to get in the chat, just go to YouTube and search SHR Media and look for that little red circle that says live. And I want to thank everybody that's in the chat, and I want to thank the mods for the great job that they're doing. But the story shows what real law enforcement action looks like. Decisive, widespread, and aimed at dismantling violent criminal networks that prey on communities. Federal agents with the Federal Bureau of Investigations executed coordinated operations across 13 cities to strike a major network of the Latin Kings gang, a criminal organization long associated with murder, drug trafficking, and violent extortion. This wasn't a symbolic raid or a photo op. It was a nationwide offensive targeting leadership, foot soldiers, and infrastructure that have terrorized neighborhoods and fueled border-related violence. Whew. According to the reporting, federal prosecutors and task force partners charged numerous individuals with racketeering, drug distribution, and conspiracy leveraging statutes, including Rico Suave. So every time I hear that, even when my one dog's called Nico, and every time I hear it, I think like Nico Suave. Okay, I'm a Gen X. What do you expect? Designed specifically to dismantle organized crime. The enforcement action spanned from major metropolitan area to smaller jurisdiction, underscoring that gang networks are not isolated problems. They are interconnected criminal enterprise that require equally interconnected law enforcement responses. Here's what's matter. Nationwide scope. Local impact. This wasn't a single district office making isolated arrests. 13 cities, multiple U.S. Attorney's Office, and coordinated FBI field office pulled intelligence, surveillance, and indictments to crash a network that crossed state lines. That's how real federal law enforcement tackles threats that do not respect city or state borders. Targeting criminal enterprise, the Latin Kings are not a social club. They are a gang with a long record of violence, from narcotics trafficking to assault and murder, especially in communities already stretched thin by rising crime. Acting against them is not criminalizing culture. It is targeting criminal conduct using laws crafted for this very purpose. Federal racketeering influencing corrupt organizations, RICO statutes, allow prosecutors to target the organization itself, not just individual low-level offenders. By charging leaders with patterns of criminal activity tied to coordinating and conspiracy, the DOJ can disrupt the structural backbone of gang activity rather than merely arrest isolated actors who pop back up the next week. This operation did not happen by accident. It came after months of surveillance, informants, data gathering, and coordinating with local law enforcement partners. That intelligent backbone is what takes down networks that otherwise evade local policing because they can quickly relocate, reorganize, and intimidate witnesses. Now, the broader implication: gangs like Latin Kings do not flourish in a vacuum. They grow where law enforcement is under-resourced. Prosecutors are reluctant to pursue long-term cases, and political leadership refuses to treat violent criminals as serious public safety crisis it is. When federal authorities step in and step up, they are filling the vacuum left by systematic weakness. Chat just makes me laugh sometimes. Sorry about that. Gangs like the Latin King, they prey on weakness. They prey on and hope law enforcement cannot touch them. That is their meat and bones of what they do. But some will argue federal action is heavy-handed. Others will say gang violence is a local matter. But this kind of coordinated network sprawling across states, feeding off local vulnerabilities, is precisely the kind of threat federal law enforcement was created to confront. And this is not the first time that we've had the federal involved in gang violence. They have gone after the biker community. God knows how many of the bikers, both of all different colors, so it can't go there. They've used it for Crips, Bloods, mob. You know, it is not unusual for this to happen. This offensive sends a clear message. Criminal networks that span cities and prey on everyday Americans will not be allowed to operate with impunity. The FBI did not just arrest a few low-level offenders. They struck at the leadership and struck the structure of a gang network, disrupting operations in a sweeping, strategic fashion. From the streets to the courts, this is law enforcement's doing its job. Communities deserve nothing less. Well, we're getting to coming up on the last segment. And, well, folks, this is the anatomy of a modern political warfare, and we're only peeling back the first layer. Don't go anyway. We will be right back after this message.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Are you looking for a way to boldly express your faith and love for your country? And check out Seven Armors, the premier apparel company for patriotic men of God, where faith meets freedom in style. Our t-shirts are more than just clothing, they're statements. Bold, stylish, and meaningful. From timeless messages to modern designs, we've got something for every patriotic man of God. Wear your beliefs proudly with Seven Armors gear. Don't miss the chance to wear your faith and freedom on your sleeve. Visit 7armors.com today and join the movement. That's the number 7armors.com.
Come listen to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show. live on select and exclusive Tuesday and Thursday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Rumble channel, SHR Media YouTube channel, X, Twitch, Spreaker, and wherever great conservative podcasts are found. BZ, your conservative Sherpa, guides you through the maelstrom of Democrat, leftist, and globalist lies, chaos, deceit, and betrayal. Raised as a free-range child with dirt, stains, mud, and freedom, BZ broadcasts from North Idaho, comfortably surrounded by actual normal people. Jump into our plush, sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent chat room on rumble.com. Click on live chat to join. Now, with 37% more umbrage and 19% more bulbosity than previous shows, featuring delicious Liberty additives for the best in late-night conservatarian talk radio. BZ reminds you that with great beard comes great responsibility. No chinchillas were harmed, embarrassed, fat-shamed, or the focus of any sarcasm whatsoever in the making of this ad.
Freedom. One nation in all of human history was built on that bedrock. Ours. A republic of the people, by the people, and for the people. Self-government requires freedom, just as freedom requires an individual willingness to self-govern. Freedom has made America exceptional. But it can only last as long as you and I seek the good, as expressed by the laws of nature and nature's God. It can only last if you and I choose to act as people of character. Forging character has been the pursuit of Hillsdale College since 1844.
Done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Reaver of Common Sense. I'm your host, Jersey Joe, here to make sense out of the senseless right here on SHR Media, conservative media done right. Before we go any further, hit that like button, smash subscribe, and share the stream like your freedom depends on it, because it just might. Every hit click helps us punch through big tech censorship, drown out the media noise, and make sure common sense has a fighting chance. And now let's get back with the articles. Let's see, where did we leave off? If Trump had bowed to Democrats on narco boats, nearly 1 million Americans could be dead, and 126 narco terrorists would be alive. That's what today's Democrats are demanding. This is not rhetoric, it's math. Policy, consequences. During a recent Oval Office press conference, Donald Trump laid out what U.S. strikes on narco trafficking boats have actually accomplished. According to Trump, maritime drug smuggling in the United States is down 97%. That did not happen by mistake. It happened because the United States stopped treating drug cartels like a law enforcement inconvenience and started treating them like the hostile actors they are. We've seen the reports coming from doctors in emergency rooms where they would go through 12, 15 overdoses of fentanyl a day, and they're now seeing maybe 1 or 2 overdoses a day. That is a huge drop. We've also seen the tactics where I guess these people thought they were smart, going, okay, he's watching the Gulf. Let's go over to the Pacific. He'll never know we're going to go through that way. Because now we're seeing the strikes happen in the Pacific. But Trump explained the stakes in blunt terms. Each narco boat intercepted and destroyed carried enough drugs to kill an average of 25,000 people. Not hypothetical, not symbolically, literally. Those are lives. And that is what Democrats were fighting against, and Rand Paul. I can't understand to stick up for drug dealers like that. they're transporting, and they're not fishing boats. We got a bunch of people that can't tell us what a woman is, trying to tell us what a fishing boat is. Now, I've done a lot of fishing in my life. Those aren't fishing boats. They are nowhere near fishing boats. But that's what you're sticking up for on the left. You're sticking up for drug cartels, narco-terrorists, whatever term you want to give them if you don't like the term narco-terrorist or drug cartel. They're coming in to kill American lives. So many people have connection, know somebody that has OD'd, a drug problem. And people are fighting against trying to solve this. If we put the fear of God into these drug runners, it's going to limit the drugs getting in till they find a new way, yes. But then we combat that problem when that comes up. And according to reports from military.com, U.S. forces have carried out at least 36 strikes on drug-running vessels since early September. Those strikes resulted in 126 narco-terrorists killed, including 116 confirmed deaths and 10 presumed deaths where bodies were never recovered. Do the math. If each boat carried enough narcotics to kill roughly 25,000 Americans and 36 boats were eliminated, that equates to approximately 900,000 American lives potentially saved. It's not hyperbole. That is basic arithmetic using the administration's own stated figures. And this is the policy Democrats want scaled back, restricted, or halted. Since the capture of Maduro, there has reportedly been only one strike, a notable drop that further underscores how much of trafficking network has enabled or shielded by hostile regimes and narco-state cooperation. In October, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, thank you for being in chat, addressed media criticism of the strikes and cut through moral posturing with a simple truth. These are drug boats, Rubio says. If people want to stop seeing drug boats blow up, stop sending drugs to the United States. Press further, Rubio made legal and strategic rational explicit. These vessels are operating in international waters, heading towards the United States with hostile intent. Flooding a country with lethal narcotics is not commerce. It is an attack, and attacks get stopped. Critics fixated on the visuals, exploding boats, night vision footage, precision strikes. What they refuse to confront are the consequences of inaction. Every successful drug run means overdoses, addiction, shattered families, and communities hollowed out by poison deliberately tracked for profit. United States is not a dumping ground for narcotics. It is not obligated to absorb deaths so foreign cartels can operate safely. Yet today's Democrats argue this policy is excessive, that it is aggressive, that it is somehow immoral to stop drug traffickers before their products reach American streets. What they never explain is the alternative, because the alternative is not peace. It is funerals. If Trump had bowed to Democratic pressures, 126 narco-terrorists would still be alive and nearly 1 million Americans could be dead or on a path towards death from drugs that never should have reached this country in the first place. That is the trade Democrats are explicitly willing to make. And Americans are growing tired of pretending that is compassion. So, the feds have descended on little Mogadishu, Lewiston, Maine, to probe Somali fraud. That is what accountability finally looks like when federal authorities stop looking the other way. Federal investigators from the Department of Homeland Security and Homeland Security investigators have descended on Little Mogadishu, which is Lewiston, Maine, an area increasingly being called Little Mogadishu, as part of a widening probe into financial fraud, illegal hiring practice, and potential firearm violations tied to migrant-run organizations funded almost entirely by you, the taxpayer dollar. According to reporting, multiple locations under scrutiny are linked to Abu Dhabi Ali, CEO of Gateway Community Service, as well as Democrat State Representative, God bless you, and Democrat Representative Gesundheit Yusuf. God bless you. Another location tied to the investigation includes property owned by Osman, founder of Maine Immigrant and Refugee Services. So far, federal officials have been careful to say they are not alleging a direct link between fraud investigation and the local Democrat Party, but the concentration of political connections, taxpayer funding, and alleged criminal activity has raised serious questions that cannot be brushed aside. HSI in New England confirmed late last month that audits are actively underway. HSI is actively conducting audits of businesses in Maine to protect Americans from fraud and ensure businesses only employ legal workers. The agency stated publicly hiring unauthorized worker risk severe penalties and undermine national security. One of the arguments I'm getting tired of is, we're just throwing the illegal immigrants out. We're not going after the companies. Yeah, we are. I know for a fact here in Florida, there are several investigations into the companies, and not just investigations. A lot of these companies, when they get busted, they wind up going out of business. You have a construction company who can't finish its contract because it hired illegals. And don't tell me, well, no, nobody's going to do it. No American, they're too pampered. They're too this. Bullshit. Because all these jobs are getting filled by Americans. Americans will do the job. Secondly, when you're talking about picking crops and all that, there is immigration for that. There's special visas you can get to come here for harvesting. Be here legally. And I've talked about it plenty of times. You be here legally, you're protected. You'll get fair wages. Democrats bitch and complain about billionaires and people making money, but they love their illegal immigration where they're getting paid low wages. They're not getting protected. They're getting slave wages. Why these companies are making shit ton of money on the backs of the worker. I thought that's what Democrats were against. I thought you were against people getting rich off the backs of people and not sharing the wealth. Well, that's what these companies are doing when they hire illegal immigrants. That you are promoting, that you are protecting. You are allowing this to happen. And then you go out there because some politician tells you that billionaires are bad. Oh, billionaires are bad. Take money from the rich. But we need our slave labor. You contradict yourself and sound like a bunch of window-licking, helmet-wearing retards. I mean, it's serious, people. Pick a lane to get into. If you want to protect that stuff, then you need to protect the illegal workers. They need to go out. Legal workers need to be hired. Americans will do the job. You bought into a narrative that is full of shit. Because we've seen it time and time again. These companies, what are we going to do now? Oh, shit. Yeah, we're overloaded with applications from Americans. Because why? We've been hiring illegals because, well, we want to pocket the extra money. And you don't want to hire American people because then they have to pay them a fair wage. They have to pay Social Security and all that. But no, Democrats want their slave labor. They've loved their slave labor for hundreds of years now. They got it back. And now not only are they helping these illegals with jobs, they're helping them commit fraud to steal taxpayer money. And then you complain of, I'm poor, I'm getting overtaxed. I wonder why, because your money's going to these fraud rings that you support and protect. Wake up. Take the blinders off. Take Trump out of the equation and just start looking at the facts. You're protecting fraud. You're protecting waste in the name of emotions, not facts. And then you just want to attack and blame everything on Republicans. When you got city after city that's in shambles that have been Democrat run for decades, but somehow it's a Republican fault. I've seen children take more responsibility for their actions than the Democrat Party ever has. When the Republican Party fucks up, I'm the first one to call them the fuck out on it. When Trump messes up, yes, I've called him out. If you listen to the show, I've called him out if I disagree with him. Democrats, they got blinders. They just do what they're told by the media and by the politicians. Time in, time out. And no one's willing to look themselves in the mirror and say, you know what? Maybe I need to relook at my stance. Maybe I need to look at my political ideology. Maybe I need to look at that I'm the problem. But you never do. You always point the finger everywhere else. You're worse than 5-year-old kids. Nothing we cover tonight exists in a vacuum. Across every segment, the same reality kept surfacing. When the law is enforced consistently, lives are protected and systems hold. When enforcement is softened, delayed, or rebranded as cruelty, the damage is real and measurable. We see it overseas, where pretending a dictator's landslide loss was a disputed election rewrites reality to avoid hard decisions. We saw it at home, where media figures learned that a camera does not grant immunity. We saw it when federal agents dismantled violent gang networks and saved communities because they were allowed to act instead of hesitate. We saw it in the cold math of narco boat interdiction, where enforcement saved hundreds of lives while critics argued optics. We saw it in the Maine, where taxpayer-funded compassion became a pipeline for fraud once oversight disappeared. We did not get into the New York City, where ideology first governance removed life-saving intervention and 10 people froze to death as a result. We didn't even get into the Congress itself, where disaster relief money meant for emergency allegedly became campaign fuel, where ethics enforcement is now being treated or tested in time, real time. And we sure didn't get into the Washington's power game, where process matters, truth matters, and political shortcomings with long memories. This isn't about left versus right. It's about consequences versus excuses. When leaders choose symbolism over responsibility, people suffer. When enforcement becomes optional, accountability collapses. And when narrative replaces reality, the bill always comes due eventually. That's what tonight is about. Before we sign off, don't forget to hit that like button, smash subscribe, and share the stream like your freedom depends on it, because it just might. Every click helps us punch through big tech censorship, drown out the media noise, and make sure common sense has a fighting chance. And you want more from SHR Media? We got BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. I think he'll be back Tuesday, and I'm hoping by Thursday. You know, I'm hoping you're feeling a lot better, BZ. 8 p.m. Pacific Standard.